So the questions that John was looking for.
Okay, Margaret, we're live, so as soon as you have quorum, you can start.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we have quorum, Shane.
Okay. All right, welcome everybody. I think everybody hopefully can hear me okay.
Wait a second, I gotta mute this.
Okay, I think we're ready to move forward, so I'll call the meeting to order. Let's do a roll call just to make sure we got quorum and figure out who we have here with us today. So I'm going to go down our usual list. So please unmute yourself to say if you are present. I'll try to take my time here to give enough time for people to respond. So going down the list, first one, Carrie with ADOT. Do we have Carrie today? No. Great, and I am Shane Tiso, City of Apache Junction, so I am here today. Do we have Tom with Avondale? All right, I don't hear anything from Avondale. What about John with Buckeye?
I'm here. Hopefully you heard me.
We hear you, John. Thank you.
Awesome. Woohoo!
Yeah, I know. That's a big achievement, right?
I don't have to call in now.
All right, Raymond with Chandler. No Chandler. How about Nick with El Mirage?
I'm here, Shane.
There he is. All right, Aaron with Gilbert. No Gilbert.
It looks like his audio is not on quite yet, or he hasn't joined with audio, but I do see him in the in the participants list.
Okay. How about Hugh with Goodyear?
Present, sir.
Thank you, Hugh. All right. What about Woodward with Litchfield Park? Sounds like no Litchfield Park. What about Josh with Maricopa City of? No Josh. What about Nicholas with Maricopa County? Anybody else with Maricopa County? Okay, no Maricopa County. Ryan with Mesa.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning, Ryan. Jeremy with Paradise Valley. Next, we got Brandon with Peoria.
Present.
Thank you, Brandon. And by chance, do we have Carl today listening in? With Phoenix? Nope. All right, Kathy, you still with us?
It's a different Kathy.
I am here.
All right, Sam with Scottsdale.
He's going to ask for Julian, I bet.
All right, no Sam. What about Dana with Surprise?
Hi, Dana is here.
All right, thank you, Dana. Do we have Kathy with Tempe or Julian?
Kathy Hall is here.
Thank you, Kathy. Adrian with Valley Metro RPTA. Is that a yes? Valley Metro? No. Doesn't sound like anybody with Valley Metro. All right, next, do we have Jeff from Federal Highways with us today?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, thanks for joining us, Jeff. And lastly, Alberto with the Governor's Office. Doesn't sound like no Alberto. All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
it looks like we missed on our list, we missed the city of Glendale. I believe we have Tony Abbo, but we can let him chime in and
Okay.
note his participation.
Yes, I guess I guess I get left out of every every sign up sheet. So, but I am here.
All right, Tony, thank you. I got you on my sheet. And anybody else that I may have missed or our list may have missed?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Mylem Stankiewicz, City of Phoenix, on behalf of Carl Langford.
Okay. Thank you. All right, the quorum is now present. This is the meeting of the MAG Transportation Safety Committee. I'm calling it to order. And again, if you are not talking, if you want to just mind your mute button, we do get feedback quite often. And then please, as we move through the orders of the day, please feel free to unmute yourself. Also, we do, I believe, have a chat box as well. I think in the past, we've done pretty good with unmuting and just state your name and the organization that you're with, and we will try to recognize you the best we can. And as we move forward, I'll try to leave some space so we have time to unmute ourselves to chime in. So we'll try to be conscious of that.
Hello, this is Mazen Muradovich from Maricopa County, DOT.
Hi there. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. I wasn't able to contact you guys hearing you calling, so I'm representing the county today on behalf of Nicholas Schwartz.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
All right, move to the agenda. Next is the approval of the minutes. And so if you haven't had a chance to look at the minutes from our last, looks like the May 26th meeting, I'll give you a minute to do so now. All right. Not sure if that gives you time, but I'm sure you all looked at the minutes before this meeting in preparation of. So does any member of the Transportation Committee have any requested revisions? And if you do, feel free to unmute yourself. All right, I don't hear any, so do we have a motion? Please give your name and organization. If you want to make a motion.
You had it?
Yep, who is that? Do I hear a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Nick from El Mirage. I move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you, Nick. Do we have a second?
I second. This is Tony Abbo, City of Glendale.
And we have a second from Tony. Thank you. All right, I'll take a roll call quick for the approval of the minutes. When I call your name, please indicate yay or nay. Shane, I'll say yay. John with Buckeye.
Yay.
Let's see, we got El Mirage, Nick.
Yay.
Yeah, let's see, do we have anybody on Gilbert yet?
Yay.
Super, thank you. Hugh with Goodyear.
Yay.
Mazine with Maricopa County.
Yeah.
And Ryan with Mesa.
Yay.
Peoria, Brandon.
Yay.
And then Phoenix.
Yay.
Canal County, Kathy.
Yay.
Surprise.
Surprise, yay.
Yep, Dana, thank you. And then Kathy Tempe.
Yay.
And let's see, we got Tony with Glendale.
Yay.
All right, I think looks like we have full approval of the minutes. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 3 of the agenda. Program Manager's Report. MEG Transportation Safety Program Manager will provide some updates and report to the committee. So I'll pass that over to Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Safety Committee. Thanks for joining us again in this environment. I'd like to give you just a really brief rundown of some of the items. A lot of them we're still kind of in a holding pattern. So the one change that we are making to the crossing guard training, I reported last time that we're going to do a virtual crossing guard training. We are going to be doing that through Zoom webinar, and that will be on July 30th from 9 to 11 a.m. We will be sending out the registration link to all the schools here in the beginning of July, probably after the holiday, so it doesn't get buried in email inboxes. And we encourage everyone to attend. We will also send you the link as well. One of the things that I'm probably going to do is kind of take a poll of all the different schools and the cities within those where those schools reside, and let you all know that we have historically had guards attend these. Granted, this will be the first time we do a virtual crossing guard training. It would still be nice if you are in attendance, should they have any questions of you for their specific crossings. So you all are welcome to that. The 2020 projects, as I mentioned before, a lot of them are kind of on hold right now until we get some indicators and some better guidance and on when it's more appropriate to reconvene our local agency safety studies, road safety assessments, safe routes to school studies, and so on and so forth. So you all may remember there was a pedestrian and bicycle scalable risk assessment webinar and workshop. One of those was held at the end of March, and the actual webinar was held on May 28th as a virtual workshop. In which TTI, who is the consultant for Federal Highway Administration, went through some of the details on the toolkit and the guidance that was developed for that toolkit. So MAG staff has reviewed that guidance and come up with some, or really a strategy to come up with a sample criteria to be developed. And so what we're hoping to do with that criteria is take it back to TTI and get some kind of a heads up as to if we're heading in the right direction. And what we're hoping to do is find locations where we can do some additional counts. And that information can, with the socioeconomic and demographic and land use data, can be combined into the toolkit. So look for that sometime between now and November. So we'll let you know how that pans out. And with that, that concludes my program manager's report, Mr. Chair.
Unmute myself. Thank you, Margaret. Any other just follow-up questions for Margaret? All right, we'll move on to item 4, strategies for safety in the regional transportation plan. Fiscal year 2019 MEG work plan included a project to develop comprehensive update to the MEG strategic transportation safety plan. At the May 26th meeting, members of the Transportation Safety Committee reviewed, discussed strategies to be recommended based in the demonstrated safety issues for each action area. MEG's staff will provide a brief review of the materials and strategies resulting from the input from the committee and the stakeholders group. As a next step, an overview of how the strategies can be promoted in the current and next regional transportation plan currently being developed. So I'll pass that to Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Safety Committee. I'm going to start out with just a really brief review. I have a lot of the same slides from before, but we've As Mr. Chair mentioned, we've had a lot of input and feedback from you all as well as from the stakeholders group, just to kind of show just a review of that very briefly, and then we'll move on to how we hope that can fit into both the current RTP and the next RTP that's being developed. So with that, we are at the point where we have at least some recommended vision, goals, action areas, and strategies. And I've provided some sources there. Just overall, a lot of the crash data information, some of the crash reduction factors or the potential crash reduction that we show on some of these slides come from the FHWA Crash Modification Clearinghouse or the AASHTO Highway Safety Manual. So the vision, again, and this is based on some input that we received, was originally no death and injury is acceptable. One suggestion that was made was that we modify that to say everybody deserves to get home safely. So the goal is really to establish that regional culture of safety that we were talking about, and that we must all accept the shared responsibility and embrace the culture of safety. So I know goals are typically more specific and have a percentage that we want to reduce, but I think you know, under the safe systems approach that we are looking at really embracing within this, that we have to understand the why first before we can really look at reduction. I think the reduction will come along with that establishment embracing of the culture of safety. So again, this is just the safe systems approach, and this is from the FHWA Zero Deaths Vision initiative. With the link there for you if you'd like to access that. But just the core focus of the safe systems approach is to adapt to human behavior, and also encouraging an understanding of the interaction between the 5 key elements of the transportation system, of that being users, roadways, roadsides, vehicles, speed, and incident management. The other core focus of the safe systems approach is that there be a mutual understanding of all parties who build and use, and to embrace that safety culture. So we wanted to provide kind of, you know, why we chose the 4 action areas for focus in the plan, and just kind of combining kind of the high level information on the safety issues that we've seen. In that 71% of all pedestrian crashes in Arizona occur in the MAG region. 55% of all non-freeway crashes in the MAG region occur at intersections. 53% of all MAG region fatalities are related to lane departure. And also from a sample taken from an analysis conducted in 2017, the intersection left turn crash mitigation study, we found about 33% of crashes are miscoded. So again, that's just for that sample from that study, but we have found in other areas some other miscodings and inaccuracies. And so the realization that accurate and timely safety data is key. So again, just to kind of highlight, you know, the areas here where, just to kind of break it down some more, why we want to focus on both non-intersection and intersection crashes as it relates to non-motorists and specifically pedestrians. If you leave out the non-intersection, we're missing a lot of improvement that we can make. So we wanted to focus on both of those. So a lot of these slides that have the proven countermeasures are going to be relevant when we start talking again about how this is going to fit into the RTP. So again, I'm not really going to go through this in detail like I did the last time, just a realization that there's going to be a direct connection between this and how we move forward in the RTP discussion. So similarly here, we have kind of a collection of different countermeasures that we can potentially implement in order to reduce some of the deaths and injury to pedestrians. And then one of the a comment, and a really good comment that I had from several of you was that we'll probably kind of generalize this countermeasure to include, to be stated as an enhanced crossing that would include hawks. It could include a pedestrian signal, rectangular rapid flashing beacon, and some other elements that are similar to that. And it would obviously depend on the condition and what was appropriate for that. And again, these are some of the additional pedestrian safety strategies. I have highlighted some of these because they'll be, you'll see them again when we start talking about the RTP. So again, for intersections, kind of setting up why we chose intersections as a focus, and then more specifically, that we want to focus on those that we have high rates of deaths as it relates to the total number of, for instance, left turn crashes. So we're going to be focusing on left turn, angle, and rear end type crashes at intersections. So again, just kind of a suite of FHWA proven countermeasures, again, in addressing the left turn crashes, addressing left and right turn at two-way stops, things like roundabouts, signal equipment upgrades that a lot of times we see will address the rear end crashes and some of the angle crashes, and then also some signal phasing. So this particular slide, I wanted to add some more context to this. Mohammed provided a description of the NCHRP 1747, which is actually pending publication. We can provide that documentation to you all when it's available, but it has some good information or some good statistics on decreasing crashes when the number of driveways is decreased, and then as well what happens when they're placed within 50 feet of each other, and that it has the potential of increasing crashes. So this slide was mostly a discussion point, really. There's not a whole lot of countermeasures here. However, I think the suggested strategy as it relates to driveways is just to simply, how do you start that discussion on the importance of driveway alignment, driveway spacing, and other treatments then that can help reduce some of these crashes. And then the $300 million a year, again, kind of highlighting the economic impact. And while the value of every human life is priceless, they do have an adverse economic impact to society and specifically to our region. So again, some strategies that you might see pop up a little bit later. Lane departure, same thing. We want to focus on, or one of the reasons why we focused on this is simply due to the fact that of all MAG region fatalities, 53 of those related to lane departure on an annual average. And again, these are some countermeasures to implement for a more forgivable system, or make improvements to the environment and improve better decision making. Okay, some of the data elements. We kind of reviewed kind of how we get data and how it's generated to begin with, and how it gets to how it gets to ADOT, and then how it gets into RT Sims and what it's used for. We use it for the top 100 crash risk locations, and that helps us identify road safety assessment locations. So, and ultimately, we do use ACES as well as MAG RT Sims in order to collect some data that's used in the Highway Safety Improvement Program funding applications, as well as the road safety funding request applications. Again, just kind of highlighting the importance of timeliness, accuracy, uniformity, and integration of data. and some of the safety data strategies that are going to be pretty predominant, not only in the current RTP, but as we develop the next. So before we start talking about the regional transportation plan, I just kind of wanted to give you a very high level status on the development of that. Next month in July, at the July meeting, we will have MAG planning staff provide us a comprehensive update on that development. So as you all may be aware, there was a RTP call for projects that was issued. It closed in March. And we received a little 1,300 call for project submissions. So the next step really is for them to keep going through that information and kind of assemble a list of needs catalog. And that will not only include the 1,300 submissions, but it will also include some of the projects that were deferred from Proposition 400. The studied projects, an example of the study projects would include those that are identified in the Systems Management Operations Plan. And then, as I mentioned, it will include the call submissions. So there on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see kind of kind of high-level breakdown of the four main buckets that those projects kind of fell into. One of the main things that MAG staff, MAG safety staff, and you all are going to be involved in is kind of coming up with a good format for including performance-based evaluation for all the projects that will include safety elements. This slide is just kind of a reminder. We're going to be talking a lot about current RTP and how we can input safety elements or safety strategies from the STSP into the current RTP. Just kind of a reminder that what we're really talking about are some of those MAG federal funds, as well as the ADOT federal funds. So the MAG federal funds are the CMAQ funds, as well as the Surface Transportation Block Grant funds, or you might recognize that, as well as TA or STP. So the RTP funding isn't just made up of the county sales tax, it's also federally transit funds and the ADOT and MAG federal funds. So how do we establish safety as a cornerstone in the RTP? As far as the current RTP is concerned, what we're going to be looking at is enhancing the safety evaluation criteria, as well as really taking a look at those projects that were submitted through the call for projects, the 1,300, and aligning the STSP strategies with those, with the current goals, and that can be a springboard into momentum. So the next RTP is being called Momentum. You see we've done some marketing outreach and some development on that, and the logo that you see there is something that you'll probably see ongoing with regard to Momentum. So within Momentum, I had mentioned earlier that we're going to be working on a framework for safety of projects reflecting the regional needs. And the regional need projects are the ones we spoke about that encompass the kind of the universe of projects that are being developed for this plan. Also, one main thing, and we've been talking about this, and we talked about this as we developed the Roadway Safety Funding Program, is that we really established that as a momentum funding priority, as well as some safety policies that we have already identified in our efforts during the process of the STSP, and how we can align those with momentum, with the visions and goals of momentum as well. So here's some examples. I'm not going to go through every strategy that we have identified, but just kind of some good examples of what can be done. So if you remember, the 2015 or the current STSP strategy in all action areas was to develop safety elements as explicit evaluation criteria for projects that are programmed in the TIP as well as the RTP. So the implementation of that is we did develop safety evaluation criteria for our ITS projects and the newly established Systems Management Operations Plan that are funded with CMAQ funds. We also have some safety evaluation criteria that's embedded in the TA and CMAQ. Again, TA is kind of under STBG or Surface Transportation Block Grant funds. And then we also put some effort into providing some guidance as to how they might include safety elements in the Pinal County, Ontario Bridge that's funded again with STBG. So moving ahead in 2019 for the current STSP that's being developed in all action areas, the strategy really is to enhance what we've done. So the implementation of that might look like refocusing on the SMNO and the Pinal County and Ontario Bridge type projects, and seeing if there's anything additional that we can do to kind of enhance that safety evaluation criteria. The other element that we've talked about before, and I've had internal discussions with other MAG planning staff regarding this, and that would be to provide a safety score in the pedestrian bicycle projects, either the TA or the CMAQ. So this would be, similar to how the CMAQ projects get an air quality score. Both those CMAQ and TA bicycle and pedestrian projects would receive a safety score. So going to be coming up with a framework for that, whether it be guidance that we provide or the safety committee actually reviewing those applications and providing that safety score. So not quite sure what that looks like yet, but that's to be developed. So again, in the current RTP, some of the things that we're looking at is somewhat Springboard type strategies. And again, an example of 2015 for the intersections action area where we implement systemic improvements based on identifying characteristics of high risk intersections. So the implementation of that included not just these three, but mainly the 2017 intersection left turn crash mitigation methodology and guidance, as well as conducting the road safety assessments and project assessments. So again, moving forward in the 2019 STSP strategy for really 3 of the 4 action areas in pedestrian intersection and lane departure, we can take all of those FHWA and AASHTO highway safety manual countermeasures, review those similarly to how we did for the left turn mitigation methodology, review of crash characteristics that align with the crash reduction documentation provided in the clearinghouse as well as in the highway safety manual. We can identify future road safety program or HSIP projects through fiscal year 2024. So just a reminder that currently we have funds for the RSP through 2024 in about $2 million amount. So we really want to form a backlog for the RSP so that we can go beyond 2024. So looking forward to the next RTP or momentum, I talked a little bit about evaluation criteria. So under the safety related data action area, the enhancement again of the safety evaluation, we can use that to come up with some good metrics for project prioritization of those 1,300 submissions, as well as the proposition deferred projects and the studied projects. An additional strategy for that would fall under all action areas in the STSP, again, would be to take a look at those countermeasures from FHWA as well as the Highway Safety Manual. See how they align with those the RTP call for projects so we can demonstrate safety in all of them. We can also develop a toolkit that can be used to include safety elements in all RTP priority projects. So again, within momentum, kind of establishing that as establishing the RSP as a funding priority from all action areas. utilizing what we are going to be developing as far as a backlog for the RSP. Again, looking at the 2020 through 2024 RSP reporting that we are going to be doing on an annual basis. Kind of, the local agencies are going to be required every year from the first year out to the fifth year to provide us some information on the safety performance of those locations that they've improved using the RSP funding. We use those two elements to really to demonstrate the importance of the RSP as a funding priority in Momentum. Now, as far as policies are concerned, we have things like design level RSAs and the toolkit itself, the safety elements toolkit that we can use for implementation and how that would be used in the future RTP, or the development of it would be that they'll be able to use that for project prioritization, as well as maybe an additional as a safety score based on the use of the toolkit. So as an example, we hear a lot from ADOT that agencies might come back, when they're going to construction and saying, we would really like to put some lighting based on either comments that they're getting from the public, or maybe they're seeing an increase in certain types of crashes. But, how do we get people to really start looking at what really constitutes the need for lighting before they put their application in, and doing it as a safety benefit, even if their project itself is not primarily safety. Things like lighting as a safety improvement should be included in these projects. So that's just an example. And then also, we'll probably hit on this on future safety committee meetings, but one of the next tasks is to really look at safety implications of some of these emerging technologies, and again, within the framework of Momentum, in that, how we use technology. And we can certainly draw a link between all the issues that are demonstrated in each action area as a need. And so it's been shown that, in some of our findings and the outreach that we've done in the review of documentation that we've seen, is it's best if you really focus on a need and then pick a technology that you could use to help meet that need. So with that, Mr. Chair, I know that's a lot of information. I'd be happy to go back to certain slides, but at this time, we're open for questions and discussion.
Yes, thank you, Margaret. That is a lot of information, and I continually to be awed by your grasp and the amount of work you and Meg put into this. So really thank you for all that you do and Meg staff. So any other discussion, questions?
Shane, I have a question. This is Kathy Hollow. Margaret, you said we're going to do that criteria we're going to be developed for reviewing all those submittals for RTP. So there's 1,300 submittals, and there'll be the idea is that there'll be a line, and who's ever evaluating them will give it a score for safety. Is that, who does that? I mean,
so thank you for the question, Kathy, Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Safety Committee. So the safety score and the evaluative criteria are really two different things. When it comes to the safety score, that would be for projects that come through MAG for request of funding, your funding applications and the different funding pots. For instance, the Safety Committee oversees review of the TA Safe Routes to School non-infrastructure projects, as well as the Highway Safety Improvement projects and the Roadway Safety Program projects. So in addition to that, the Active Transportation Committee has oversight to reviewing the CMAQ and TA pedestrian and bicycle type project applications. So the safety score is really associated with that type of effort, where the 1,300 submissions comes in. And again, we're going to be seeing this a little bit more exhaustive list. You saw back in this slide here, right now, just in general, they're falling into these 4 buckets. I know that they've done some work to kind of extract some more detail to that. But we need to be able to identify how the performance of the projects that go into the RTP, or not necessarily at this point, the performance, but as a prioritization. So for funding within the next RTP. And I know that they've sourced out things like arterial roadways, arterial intersections, roadway other, pavement preservation, commuter rail, high capacity transit, active transportation, and so on and so forth. And so part of the extensive work that the planning staff is doing is kind of breaking all of that down. And we have had, or planning staff and MAG management have had comments from either city managers or even mayors regarding things like, putting more of an emphasis on safety and specifically pedestrian safety. And so with all of the framework of the discussion going on in development of the RTP, how, we're going to have to break those down in some way. And MAG staff is doing that right now. We'll be given a lot more comprehensive breakdown of what that is, and have a future discussion at the July, probably a more extensive discussion at the July meeting as to how we can do that, and what they want us to look at as far as developing qualitative and quantitative measures for each one of those project types.
Thanks, Margaret.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? This is for information and discussion. All right, thank you, Margaret. I guess hearing none, we'll move on to item 5 in the agenda.
I think I had a couple more slides.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Just some quick next steps, and I talked about this a little bit in answering Kathy's question. So MAG staff, safety staff, as well as the safety committee and the stakeholders group are going to continue refining the strategies. So you may see more emails from me specifically on the strategies. Obviously, there's going to need to be continued coordination with the RTP's planning staff to come up with that framework for qualitative and quantitative measures for prioritization. And then also we'll be developing, based on those strategies, developing programs, projects, and other initiatives that we can put into the action plan that will be housed within the 2019 STSP. And then future tasks, as I briefly mentioned before, and if I think Mohammed can unmute himself, just have him give you a really brief key points on the work that's been done so far on the safety implications of emerging technologies.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Mr. Chair and member of the Transportation Safety Committee. So as part of reviewing the efforts nationwide of emerging technologies, we, the consultant, and we reviewed the ongoing efforts that are going on nationwide, and we found that one major effort with US DOT funding of around $45 million involving 3 states, New York, Wyoming, and Florida. So of those, they are doing some major effort when it comes to connected vehicle technologies. And one major point that Margaret already mentioned is that when they are trying to apply connected vehicle technology in their areas, they are making sure that they're addressing what are their safety needs. So, for example, New York City DOT utilized this US DOT funding to apply connected vehicle technologies in their city jurisdiction to align with their Vision Zero safety goal and putting emphasis on pedestrian safety. Similarly, Wyoming DOT put some emphasis on winter weather-related crashes, and they applied connected vehicle technology to reduce the number of crashes that are overrepresented during winter weather conditions. So, long story short is that they have implemented these connected vehicle technologies, but for all of these three major efforts, the evaluation results are still pending. They're in the process of trying to find out what are the safety implications or what were the safety effects, or they're trying to come up with the performance measures before and after the implementations of this connected vehicle technology. So they are still working on those, and results from those efforts will be coming in the future, and we will be making sure to update the safety committee. Apart from these national efforts, there are definitely some efforts going on at the local agency level. There are quite a few local agencies that are trying to deploy emerging technologies for safety improvements. One example we can provide right now is City of Bellevue in state of Washington. They have applied video analytics using artificial intelligence and machine learning to come up with intersections which they consider of high risk in terms of near-miss scenarios. If you remember, we have conducted one study using video analytics for pedestrian safety in the MAG region, and in the future, we are near future, we are also planning to pursue such effort involving major arterial transit locations in the MAG region. So City of Portland is also doing an effort where they are trying to collect complete trip data from an e-scooter company to see what are the patterns of those trips and what are the safety barriers the trip makers are facing, and try to come up with proactive safety improvements for the user. So there are other efforts in the local agency level also. So our aim is to get ourselves more updated for latest efforts and see where our needs align with some of these emerging technologies, and then trying to consider these emerging technologies so that we can meet our safety needs and improve safety in the MAG region. So with that, Margaret, I will finish. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Any questions for Mohammed? Okay, and then task 8 is as it relates to safety performance measurement. We'll be taking a look at that once we start getting a clearer picture of what the strategies are going to look like, what those programs, projects, and initiatives are going to be. One of the initiatives or one of the programs, just as a reminder, is the Pedestrian and Bicyclist Safety Education and Enforcement Program. So that is a strategy that's going to be implemented. How are we going to measure the safety performance of that, as well as just safety in general in the MAG region on a year-to-year basis. And then moving forward to the draft plan and final plan, and hopefully have that in front of Regional Council at the end of this year. Any questions? Or Mike Blankenship is also has the ability to speak. If I've left anything out, Mike.
You did a fine job, Margaret.
Thank you. So I think that concludes this agenda item, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Thanks, Mohammed. Yeah, any final question there before we move on to, I think we're ready to move on to item 5. All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, and that's the Roadway Safety Program. In September 2019, MEG initiated a new safety improvement funding program, the MEG Roadway Safety Program, STSP is intended to supplement the ADOT Highway Safety Improvement Program, HISIP. The RSP provides funds for construction of safety improvement projects with flexibility to address immediate safety needs region-wide. MEG staff will now provide a review of the recommendations made by the working group for enhancements to the program ahead of the August call for projects. So I'll forward that over to Margaret, and this looks like it's for information and discussion. Margaret?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Safety Committee. This is just a really, just a one slide snapshot of some of the recommendations that were made. We did reconvene the group that originally met and put a lot of work into developing the program itself last year, June through July timeframe. So we wanted to talk about some lessons learned and whether it be difficulty that they had developing the application or things that may not have been clear. So we made some recommendations to that. And then I also have Brian Rubin on the line. He is performance measurement staff here at MAG. If I misrepresent anything we're doing with regard to the automation of the application. So some of the recommendations is for to look a little bit closer at some of the maintenance items and to kind of clarify basically the rules of the game. So for instance, if we're doing a safety improvement to a traffic signal, let's say we're putting in some new phasing and we're doing positive offset along with the left turn turning movement portion of the medians. If we had some that included a traffic control cabinet. So I know some agencies have kind of policies that if you do upgrades to some of the traffic signals that that it's kind of their policy that the traffic control signal, if it needs to be upgraded, that it would be done consecutively with the with the next project that goes into the ground. So we need to kind of clarify kind of the rules for doing that, and so we can identify these as strictly safety improvement projects. The other is to kind of solidify the policy for the dollars that are left over. So I can tell you as an example, we have a project that's slated to be constructed here this year. There are some elements that they found through the design that are not going to be able to be constructed for whatever reason. So basically, they're going to move forward with construction. I don't think it's necessarily one of the major safety elements of the project, but regardless, there's going to be kind of they're not going to be invoicing MAG for reimbursement of some of the funds that they had requested. And so what happens to those dollars? So those are things that we need to make sure that we solidify in the policy. Also, the public outreach element that's a requirement in the application, kind of giving better guidance on when you need public outreach. Some projects really don't need public outreach, but there are some that we've seen, they go to construct a portion of it and they have a lot of feedback from the neighborhood that's negative. So on one end, we don't want to put a restrictive requirement in that all projects receive some public outreach, but we also want to avoid going to construction and then the entire project can't be implemented. So kind of balance those things out and provide some better guidance to that. One of the elements that they found a little bit difficult was the fact that projects had to be, really the design had to be ready before the application was developed. And if you remember last year, we were in a little bit of a crunch for time because we wanted to fund the 2020 projects, and that was a little bit of a short fuse. This coming call for projects is going to be for fiscal year 2022. So hopefully, as you are developing your CIPs, you have some of these things in mind for planning for the design and construction. And so there's a bit more lead time this go around for those 2020 projects. So hopefully that will not be as difficult. In addition, we did talk about the automation of the applications. I'll have Brian chime in and give us a little update on what the status of that is and what the timeline for that is. I think some of the recommendations that were made specific to the application itself, we had Ted Brown, also for our performance measurement program manager, attend that meeting, and so he was able to provide us with some good feedback on if it was, some of these recommendations would be doable within this cycle for the automation. So one of the things we talked about was you may or may not remember, but there's a section in the application that is relevant to only ADOT type projects. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't excluding ADOT from being able to submit for safety improvements, say on grant. So there's a specific section of the application. So for the automation process, what we're looking at doing is when you enter your information, you could even use a geofencing part of the application. And when you select the area where your project is to be constructed, it'll automatically collapse that ADOT section, and you don't need to feel you need to address it. So those are some of the neat things that are going to be coming up. And then we also discussed the 5-year crash data window. And, a lot of times we'll have projects where just within the last month or two, the local agency has seen either an increase in crashes or maybe they have some other condition that's changed drastically between the stated 5-year window of crash data. And so allowing them to be able to use that crash data as long as they demonstrate the changes in the conditions. So Brian, if you're there, if you could speak a little bit to the application automation process.
Sure thing, Margaret. I don't have a whole lot to add onto what you've already said, but like you have listed here in your next steps, the application automation and digitization process is in progress. Not a whole lot to report there, and we are still operating under the goal of having everything ready for you for the next call for projects. That's pretty much where we're at this point.
Thank you, Brian. I didn't misrepresent anything.
Not that I heard, no. Thanks, Margaret.
Okay, thank you. So as we mentioned, we're anticipating the August call for projects for the 2022 fiscal year RSP projects, and we do have a little bit more than the 2 million that was originally. If you remember, we have 10 million total, so it's through from 2020 to 2024, it's 10 million. So broken down into each year, it's 2. We have a little bit extra this time in the 2.1 million that's available for that call. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Margaret. Let's see, we'll move on to looks like item 6, so report by committee members on the transportation safety activities. I'll go through our roll call list here, just go down the list. If you have a report, please unmute yourself and we'll get the opportunity to hear what you're up to. So going down the list, first is Apache Junction, that's myself. I want to give a report because it is safety related, and that has to do with just the preparations for the monsoon season as well as wildfire season. So, a lot of cities are busy right now with the pandemic, but we're forced to take this all hazards preparation approach, meaning wildfires as well as the monsoon season. So just a little information what City of AJ is doing during the month of May and June. We've been making efforts to go through all of our stormwater outfalls, our ditches, catch basins, etc., making repairs and improvements. Also, a big part of that this time of the year, we do a lot of public outreach, education when it comes to what citizens can do in preparation on their own properties when it comes to mitigating flood, as well as making their properties wildfire resistant. So just in a nutshell, just wanted to lay that out to you guys. I know a lot of cities are probably doing the same as that, but that is definitely still safety related and transportation related to a lot of degrees, especially when it comes to wet crossings, which a lot of our cities I know do have, and that gets to be a real concern amongst us in transportation with keeping people safe as they deal with our wet crossings that we still have a lot of throughout the region. All right, we'll move on from Apache Junction. What about John with Buckeye? Anything, John?
Nothing new to report. We're just doing what we can. Nothing transportation safety related, though.
All right, Nick with El Mirage.
Hi, Shane. No updates from El Mirage. Thank you.
All right, what about Gilbert? Anything with Gilbert? What about Goodyear?
Nothing for Goodyear.
All right, thank you, sir. What about Maricopa County?
Nothing for Maricopa County.
What about in Mesa?
Mesa.
What about Brandon with Peoria?
No updates for Peoria.
Thank you. How about Phoenix?
No updates from Phoenix.
Thank you. How about Kathy with Pinal County?
Mr. Chair, yes, I'd like to just report that the countywide LED stop sign project and advanced warning sign project will be moving forward. We just approved the grant agreement in May, and we hope to get that started. So we actually advanced this HSIP project and converted it more to a maintenance and operational type project rather than a design and construction project. So we were able to advance this project that this committee approved through the HSIP application process. So we're excited to get that one started. That's it, Mr.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I'll be anxious to hear how your outcome is with those signs. I know City of AJ is interested because we have a lot of rural areas too that could, those signs could be applicable for. Thank you, Kathy. All right, Dana with Surprise.
No report today, thanks.
All right, what about Kathy with Tempe?
Just briefly, we had a Transportation Commission meeting this morning, and one of our planners made a presentation on open cities, which is kind of safety related as it has to do with COVID and some changes cities are doing to help with social distancing, but it impacts transportation because some of them are doing parklets along roadways, or they're closing roadways so people can be out walking, or they're switching signals to basically a pre-timed thing so that the pedestrian signal comes up every time without having to push a button. So there were quite a few examples of things that other cities are doing. And actually our commission was kind of interested in it. So I'm not sure where we're going to go with it or not, or do anything with it. Funding will be a question, but kind of safety related on the side there because of the virus right now. So anyways, that's all.
Yes, very good, very good. All right, anything with Jeff with Federal Highways?
The only thing I'll mention, we got a lot of stuff rescheduled in the future. The one thing we got coming up next would be the U.S. Limits 2 workshop, which we're virtualizing and probably going to break apart into 2 or 3 sections. Currently, the first session of that is being planned to take place on July 23rd. More to come on that probably towards the end of this week or next week. I'll be sure to share it with Margaret so she can share it with the group. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. All right, not last but not least, Tony there with Glendale.
No reports to add.
Thank you, Tony. All right, we're moving on to number 7, requests for future agenda items. Do any members of the committee have any topics or issues of interest that you would like to have considered for discussion in the next future meeting? Anything right now, please unmute. Also, we do have a chat box, so if you have something, feel free to leave something there, and we will make sure we check that here before we exit. All right, number 8, moving on, next meeting date, place. Next meeting for the Transportation Safety Committee will be held, looks like 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, July 28th. And it'll probably be virtual conference again unless otherwise noted. All right, and it looks like we're at adjournment. So it is about 11:05 right now. So I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting and thank everybody for, again, your patience with doing this method of running the meetings. And but again, look forward to seeing you in person here sometime soon. Thank you, everyone.